All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Infinite Abilities podcast. I'm your host, Nick Yerhart. And today I have an awesome guest, and I can't wait for you guys to hear more about him. He's doing some incredible things. So, Charles, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Nick, sure. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me. I'm a Midwestern boy. Grew up in Iowa, graduated from high school at 16, wasn't ready for college, worked for a while, went and joined the United States Marine Corps, spent 4 years in service, including 2 years overseas and a combat tour in Vietnam. Came back, met and married my wife in Kansas City. She was 10 years older than I was and had 5 children when I married her. I claim insanity, but it worked. We were married for 45 years before she passed.
I'm sorry about that.
Business did not recognize my military experience as valuable. So then, as much as it is today, that most businesses don't realize what military experience brings to the table. So I went and got my degrees, my BBA, my MBA, sat for and passed my CPA exam while still in graduate school. Went to work for Texas Instruments. Spent 15 years in the corporate world, large companies, big, small companies, family-owned, startups, turnarounds. Wonderful experience. Realized when I was in my early 40s, I was never going to get to the top of a corporation. Didn't have the political skills. Unwilling to stab people in the back and toss them off the ladder. So just don't play politics well. So if I was going to run a company, I was going to have to start my own. So I did. Ruth and I hung out a shingle in December. It'll be a third of a century ago. And been going ever since. We grew it as an accounting practice with a payroll sideline. About a dozen years ago, I sold off the accounting portion to my partner and kept the payroll and continue to grow it today. And we provide payroll services and payroll-related services to small and medium-sized businesses around the country.
That's awesome. You've definitely done a lot, and it's incredible. And, payroll is something that, as business owners, we all need. Sometimes we don't want to, but, you got to pay your employees. Employees are what keeps our businesses going.
Absolutely. And if you don't pay them, they tend not to show up.
Exactly. I think we've all had a job or two like that. And yeah.
Yes.
It's not fun. So how do you help your clients? Like what makes you stand out above the rest?
Our unique selling proposition is compliance. I'm a certified public accountant. I'm also a U.S. tax court practitioner, which means I can represent my clients in U.S. tax court without being an attorney. It's the only federal court that you can become licensed to practice in if you're not an attorney. There's a couple of hundred of us in the country that can do that. So our competition does a reasonably good job of preparing paychecks. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't stay in business. But what they do a very poor job of is when either you make a mistake or the IRS makes a mistake, and the IRS makes millions of mistakes a year. I mean, it's 100,000 civil servants using obsolete technology. Okay? So there's millions of problems every year. My competition does not take the professional aspects of solving those problems that we do. They're a reporting agent. They can report on what they did. We take a power of attorney from our clients that gives us the ability to advocate for them with the Internal Revenue Service. And in many cases, we know more than the IRS does. I mean, this is what we do for a living. The IRS people get transferred in and out. There's new people. There's all kinds of problems, and they're civil servants. They're not motivated the same way entrepreneurs are. So we can solve problems that our competitors can't because we do it all the time. We don't. Most of our competitors, if you have a problem, they'll tell you to go talk to your CPA or to an attorney, and if your CPA understood the payroll problems, he'd be doing your payroll already. And tax attorneys are very expensive, and they're going to charge a lot of money to figure out what's going on, where we have all the data at our fingertips and probably know what happened already and
Mm-hmm.
have a real good idea of where the screw up is and how to solve it and how to fix it. And we know how to deal with the IRS.
Well, that's huge because you take a lot of burdens off your clients, and
Absolutely.
as as a client, that's what you want more than anything. The less you have to do yourself, the better.
Yeah, I mean, we all as business people have to delegate things. We need to spend our time doing what only we can do. First rule of time
Mm-hmm.
management. Only do what only you can do. Everything else should be delegated to people,
Yeah.
in many cases, are better suited, better trained, better experienced than you are to do that particular task. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's basic business management, delegation, and that's how you grow a business. You can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
You have to rely on your staff.
Yep. And if you don't, give your staff the tools and let them do it, you're not going to build a very big business. I see it all the time. That's where businesses hold themselves back. The owner just can't, let go and have somebody else do the things that he's doing or she.
Exactly. And you have to give them both the responsibility and the authority to be able to do the task properly. And in many cases, you want to outsource it. I mean, I don't mow my own lawn. I don't sew my own clothes. I don't grow my own chickens. I don't do a lot of things. I outsource that. I use the grocery store. I shop at Walmart. Okay. I shop at online for my clothes and so on. I have a tailor that does my trousers and my shirts. All these things are outsourced. I don't build my own automobile. I outsource it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mercedes builds a very nice one for not too much money in reality.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
You want to outsource these things. We do payroll for what's a pittance in reality, and to learn all the things you would need to do it properly, or to hire somebody who knows all the ways to do it properly, and then get someone who can provide the added additional compliance capabilities that we have, would be extraordinarily expensive for that little bit of work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree so much, and yeah, it's amazing when you start delegating stuff out. I started doing that last year, just for at a personal level. Kind of like the thing that you were talking about. Like, last year I'm mowing my lawn. I have 4.5 acres. So it would take 3 hours. And I was like, why am I spending 3 hours doing this when I could be building my business? So I hired it out.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exact example that brought it to my mind years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I can get the lawn mowed. I have a very small lawn. I've got a couple acres, but only a little bit is grass. The rest is all natural down on the lake. And for $40 a month, that can get mowed twice a month. Well, it's going to cost me 2.5 hours, get ready, do it, clean up afterwards, and so on. In that same 2 hours, I can make several times as much money using my professional skills. So it occurred to me it was a waste of my time. If I'm going to work, and to me, mowing the lawn was work, not a hobby, not some fun thing. It was work. So if I'm going to work at something that makes enough money not only to pay for having the lawn, but put some money in my pocket on top of it instead of spending 2 hours with the lawn every month. I mean, it was just when you look at it that way, you go, duh.
Yeah, exactly. And It's things like that that if more people would do, they would be a lot more successful in life. And
I
not
agree.
only are you hiring out to help yourself, but you're also helping another business. So therefore, you're creating more jobs and paying more people. So it's literally a win-win all the way around.
Absolutely. I agree fully. There
Mm-hmm.
are some people that find it very, very difficult to delegate. Uh,
Yep.
and I don't know whether that's a matter of personality or training or experience, but some of them just find it impossible to do so. And that's not good. If that's one of your listeners, they need to look at that and say, when I look at what's the worst thing that can happen? I don't like the way the lawn's mowed, so I hire somebody else. Okay,
Yep.
it's like a bad haircut. A bad
Mm-hmm.
haircut for me doesn't last very long.
Yep. Yep.
If I go to a barber and they don't cut the hair the way I want, next time I go to somebody else, it'll grow out. It's not like it's life threatening. Most of these things are not really so serious that you need to be concerned with them. If they work, they work. If they don't, try something else the next time. It's not
Exactly.
life. It's not a life threatening thing. It may look ugly for a couple of weeks. Well, so what?
Yeah.
It's ugly when the dog gets into it. Whatever.
Yep. And it's the same thing inside your business. If you hire an employee or already have one, and you give them a new job, and they don't do it right, well, either they need more training on that job, which isn't hard to do, or you just need to find somebody else.
Right, and hiring is difficult, and sometimes it's not the right fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. Training is a wonderful thing, and it's something you need to work with your staff on constantly, and we do. We constantly have training sessions, and things change in the payroll business more than you'd think. The laws change, regulations change, forms change, and we want our people to be as educated as possible. So we're constantly getting them more knowledge and more information and updating them so we can provide the best possible service for our clients. So training is a big thing, and we've had cases in the past where people just couldn't get it and or had a bad attitude about it. Or would lie to me. We have a checklist. Every payroll is done as if a CPA was doing the payroll, and there's a checklist, and they sign off on it. And there's one cardinal rule: if you sign off on it, you did it. You may have screwed it up, and that's training.
Yeah.
But if you initial that you did that and you didn't do it, you're fired.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
and there's a lot of things that need to be that strict and simple. If you don't do it, you're done.
Training, learning, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. That's part of being human. Okay. That's why we try to automate as many things as possible. Computers don't make as many mistakes as people do. And if they're programmed properly and everything else, they make very, very few. But so we allow for mistakes to a certain extent that are training related, but line and attitude are two things that if you don't have the right attitude for the business and the right culture, well, it's not a good fit, and it's best for everybody if you move on.
Yeah.
So
I agree. My dad ran our company for 10 years, and one thing that he did frequently is he would hold on to people longer than he should. And, you can only give people so many chances, and if they keep making the same mistakes, you just gotta let them go. And
you have to.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, all you're doing is holding your business back, and that's hurting you and your family, and all your other employees too.
all your other employees because they know it and they see it and they're not happy with it because it impacts them, their work, and how the customers are viewing the company and everything else that's involved. And so the most expensive thing you can do is not fire the people that need to be fired. Bad hires are expensive enough, but not firing them is far more expensive and far more detrimental to you, your clients, your business, your fellow employees. Absolutely.
And I love that you brought up other employees, because that's something that I experienced myself. It's like, okay, you see, your coworker who just kind of half-assed their job, and then you're out there busting your ass, trying to do as good as you can. For what? What's the point? And that's how a lot of employees feel. Well, then you do that long enough, and your good employees are going to start acting like the bad employees, and then soon enough, all your employees are going to be bad employees.
It affects morale. It affects performance. If they're getting paid the same for doing half-assed job, why are you working your ass off? Yeah,
Exactly.
And it just goes downhill from there. You've got to make that, and it's never fun to fire people. Okay, it's not fun at all. I have two over time. We haven't had to hire or fire anybody in over 5 years, which is great.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but firing people is tough, and you've got to do it, and you've got to sit down and force yourself to say, okay, we got to do it. I'm going to do it. It's not pleasant. It's never pleasant, but that's part of being the boss.
I wouldn't say it's never, it's not pleasant, but I know I have fired someone who I was very happy to get rid of. Let's just say that. I do have those.
When I get to the point I'm ready to fire them, I'm happy they're gone. But it's never pleasant to sit down and say you're fired.
No, it's not.
It's tough. You're really but I don't think I've ever fired anybody that didn't know it was not coming. Okay, because I've warned them and I've counseled them, and I don't just fire people. Just you're fired. It's always, hey, you need to do this. This is threatening your continued employment if you're not going to be able to fix this. So it's never a surprise, and it should never be a surprise. So, I mean, that's how I feel about things.
And one of the worst things that I think businesses can do, and this is something that I've seen, is where they want you gone, so they basically try to make you quit. And that's like the worst. I think that's just, it's bad business. Like, just everybody needs to stop doing that.
It's bad business. You've made a bad hire, or things have changed where you now have somebody that is not a good fit. That's part of being in business, to try and force them out to save the unemployment insurance and so on. Jeez, that's low. I mean, that's that. Just sit down with them and say, hey, this isn't working. I'm going to have to let you go, and suck it up and pay the cost. That's just because the morale situation and the aspects on other employees. The other employees see that you're trying to force them out. They're going, when's he going to do that to me?
Exactly.
It's not good for morale or for company culture. Company culture says, if you're not a fit, you need to move on. And that's
I believe by doing that, you're actually costing your company more in the long run than if you just pay the unemployment. Because it hurts everyone.
And if you do that, your employees will know it, and they will always know it. So you've hurt your culture for forever, and that can be
Exactly.
extraordinarily expensive. You're right. I agree fully.
Hmm. Yep. I'm glad that I brought that up because that's kind of something that's near and close to me, if you know what I mean. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I've been there, but yeah. So what's an interesting thing about you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm
Uh,
just I'm just a Midwestern boy that works his ass off and loved his wife and his kids and enjoys his business and enjoys growing it. I'm successful. I mean, anybody who's been in business for a third of a century is successful. Uh,
yep.
I'm we're going to do that'll be December and we're going to celebrate it. I'm not sure exactly yet, but we're going to do something. Uh, I think it's kind of a milestone because I will probably not see half a century.
Well, you never know. You never know.
You never know,
That's
but that's
awesome.
17 years in the future, and that's pushing it at my age.
Yeah. Well, but I good for you. A lot of businesses they don't last 10 years. So you,
Yeah, most of them don't last four. So
yeah,
it tickles me that when I realized that here a couple of months ago, there was actually going to be a third of a century. Wow.
yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. So cool. All right, so I got a question for you. So my slogan is your abilities are infinite. What does that mean to you?
You can be more or less anything you want to be. You can accomplish anything you want to accomplish. I believe that too. It's a matter of perseverance. It's a matter of taking the first step, which is what stops a lot of people. It's not the last
Mm-hmm.
step, it's the first step. They hesitate and they never get to where they're going because they don't start it. Every journey begins
Mm-hmm.
with the first step. And so if you want something, if you want to learn to play the piano, you want to learn to be an accountant, you want to be whatever. Now, there are some limitations, but they're very few and far between.
Yep.
I'm never going to be a pro football player at my age, but that's life. That's one of those things. But I've grown the business. I'm studying French. I'll be able to be fluent in French here in a few years.
That's
So
awesome.
you can do. I wanted to become a U.S. tax court practitioner. I found a school and went to school in my 60s for 2 years and passed the exam on the first sitting. Like I passed my CPA exam on the first sitting because
Wow.
I prepared for it and I worked at it and I studied
Mm-hmm.
and I became knowledgeable. Yeah, I mean, within your physical limits, you can
Mm-hmm.
be almost anything you want to be. Um,
Yeah.
that's just, the world is unlimited, and
Mm-hmm.
to limit yourself by not believing that you can. Um, I've forgotten his name. He's Bugsy from Dallas. He was 5'6". He wanted to play basketball. He became a professional basketball player. Um, Everybody probably
Wow.
knows who I'm talking about. At 5'6", he became a professional basketball player, because he wanted to,
Yeah.
and he chose to do it,
Yep.
and he worked at it, and he became one.
Yep.
Okay, so you know, literally, you're right. You can be anything you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I love the answer. I I ask that question on every episode, and it warms my heart to know all the different infinite possibilities that people can look at that phrase. That's what I
Yes,
like about it the most is it means something different to every person out there, but in the grand scope of things, it's the same. Your abilities are infinite. If you put your mind to something, you can achieve it.
Absolutely.
Yep. I love that. Thank you so much. Any last words before we go? Words of
Well,
wisdom, as I
yeah,
like to say?
yeah, absolutely. I stole this from Bill Gates. People will overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. Life, business, learning, it's a marathon. You may not achieve it this year, but if you keep working at it, you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish over a third of a century.
Yep, exactly. You know, it's incredible that you brought up that quote because I literally was listening to a podcast this morning and I heard that quote on that podcast. Awesome. So cool.
It's my standard piece of advice. I mean, it's so
Yeah,
true.
it is.
It took me a lot longer to get where I wanted to be than I expected it, but I got there.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I feel that. I'm just starting my business, and I'm almost a year in. I thought I would be a lot further than I am now, but when I look back at how far I am compared to where I was, I love where I'm at now compared to where I was a year ago. I have grown and overcome so much, but it's hard to see that unless you take the time and look back on that year.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, it was great having you.
Nick,
Thank
my
you so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure.
All right, everyone. That was another episode of the Infinite Abilities podcast. I will see you on the next one. And remember, your abilities are infinite.